Hello everybody, I'm Rushab Kataria. So I started as a fellow for I came to LV Prasad for my grad project, and like this whole journey has been like a really blessing for me because that's the only reason I'm here right now. So the products that I work were order of magnitude, that's Ohm and Bifrost, and you can see the display outside. So yeah, so these are the two main products that I work on too. So Ohm was the virtual reality design that I worked on, and Bifrost was a supporting Android mobile phone application for it. So yeah, entering healthcare field as a designer, I really had limited knowledge. I am a UX designer and I'm really fresh out of college right now. So no very limited knowledge of medical. And yeah, so I've learned a lot. I've absorbed a lot from LV Prasad, and I would really like to share a few insights of how I went to or how I took my process, because I had 4 months and I was told that they want to get the product out in markets or at least hit the final stages within the 4 months. And also I had 4 months because I had my grad project delivery posted. So what is virtual reality? First question I would ask is, how many of you have actually used a virtual reality device? So virtual reality device, many of them have a concept, or many of them think that when you are actually wearing virtual reality device, you start feeling dizzy. That's something that they think is going to happen absolutely after 5 minutes of using it. But that's not the case. There are multiple studies conducted, and it also depends on what environment you are working on to. So there are two major different types of environment that are supported in virtual reality. That's interface and environment. Environment is generally what you want to create around the user or what you want the user to experience. Interface is something that helps you to get connected with it or be a part of it. Interface being if you're actually hitting an object somewhere or you can actually move the object, those are the interface interactions that you have. And what is healthcare when I'm talking about, or how can we help healthcare in virtual reality? If you see nowadays, healthcare is going towards a lot of technological aspects of it, and virtual reality can actually help them through multiple different processes like helping consultations, surgeries, simulations, or even skill training. So these are a few advantages where people can actually start learning new skills, and here you don't actually hurt anybody because it's a virtual world that you are into. Fears and phobias. This is more for your customers, or we can call them patients, where there are few patients who are really scared of how to get into the environment or how the environment would react when they're getting onto for the surgery. Next is training. This is majorly training for new doctors, or maybe someone who are into their internships, where they can actually train into some newer machines or technologies. And conducting tests. Conducting tests is more or less where you can actually perform tests, or the patients can perform tests. And that was my grad project, where we actually made a device using virtual reality where the patients were actually conducting a test and getting the result out of it. So this is something that I came across during my internship, and this was a really good quote, that before you begin considering structuring for your virtual reality, you need to consider what sort of experience you need to make. Unlike the mobile devices or other designs that we create these days, virtual reality is a world of itself. You are not a separate part, but you are into it. You are a part of the complete environment that you are getting onto. When you start for virtual reality, having a process was something that was a major thing that helped me. Researching not only on how to use a virtual reality headset, but researching on how the industry works, because every medical industry is going to have its own flow, its own system, its own way of taking things ahead. Designing isn't just how to make everything in the virtual world look prettier, or maybe something that came out of a movie, but it's also about how you design the interactions of it. And measure is more or less usability testing, which I really believe strongly on, because in virtual reality you need to understand that if you don't measure, or if you are really late to measure, you need to recreate everything, and it's not a very easy or a very short process to get into. So learn how the industry operates. So when I say industry, it means first understand what kind of healthcare are you getting onto. Understand what is the way that they work. Understand what is the basics, or what is the most important aspect you're designing for. How the patients are interacting with the machine, how the machine is interacting with the doctors, how the doctors are interacting with the patients. There are multiple different ways you should understand how the industry is operating, or how the people are actually helping the industry operate better. Once you know how your industry works, or once you understand what you want to get out of the healthcare system that you have, you need to know your target users. For my product, I had multiple target users because the people who are going to purchase the VR headsets were not the same people who are going to use it. You're using the virtual reality headset on patients. The doctor is going to purchase it. But the Bifrost, the mobile application, was used by the person conducting the test. So having multiple target audience, it's very important to know who you're designing for. Because once you know who you're designing for, you also understand the complexity you need to keep. The complex, so for example, if your audience or if the people who are going to use your device are going to be older than age 70, you need to keep the interaction as simple as possible. But if someone who's a millennial, or if you think somebody who's really young enough can handle some complex interactions or button placements, you can actually go ahead with it. But this is something that you're going to understand with the user testings that you perform with your users. Asking right questions is the biggest key, is something that I found was the thing that led me out to a source or to the answers for major things. Who is going to be using the product? Are you designing it for the patient? Are you designing it for a doctor? You really need to understand what kind of environment you're building and who is going to use it. What are they using it for? Is this for diagnostic? Are you designing it for training? Are you designing it for helping someone better their skills? Or what exactly are you trying to get out of it? And will your solution solve the problem? You need to define, or you need to have a brief or a problem before getting into the industry. It's not, you can't keep it vague when it comes to healthcare. Think about experience and design. So we as designers right now think everything is rectangle. All the interfaces that we're designing for are rectangular. Let it be our mobile phones, our websites. But when you get into the virtual world, it's 360 degrees. You don't only design for what you're seeing in front of you, but it's also what's happening in your periphery, or maybe even something that is happening around you. So it's 360 degrees of complete experience that you need to design for. Because once your environment gets boundless, you actually start thinking outside that rectangle, and you also understand how can you actually smartly place interactions for your users. Because if you're starting to design something and you start the application in the and you don't see any interactions happening in front of you, but when you actually design for a rectangle, you have all the interactions in front of you laid out for you. So you should also understand how you're going to lead, or how you're going to help the user understand how he's supposed to navigate throughout the complete system. Thinking beyond the rectangle, as I said, like we all are grown onto designing for it. So that's something that we really need to understand. Ergonomics is something that is very important. Most of the devices that are available in market right now, especially for eye care. So you should understand there is a particular style you actually keep your neck, or you place your neck upon the device, a particular way you need to sit on the chair. But when it comes to virtual reality, you can actually sit at your comfort, at your ease, and then start designing for the particular device that you have. So understanding how beautiful or how simple you want the ergonomics to be is very important. When it comes to virtual world, you actually can have interactions that go for 360 degrees. For how long do you want your patient or the user to look upon a certain angle is also very important to understand. So when people start talking about virtual reality, everybody comes out thinking the interactions that happen in the movie Iron Man or some really fancy Hollywood movies. But you also need to understand the heavy visuals that you're going to put is going to exhaust the user. Who are you making it for, and what is the use of putting, and how exhausting do you want the interactions to be is very important when it comes to this. So this shows you the comfort levels or the ergonomics of a virtual reality headset. When you're using the headset, it's a three-dimensional world when you see in front of you. So you're going to have a foreground, midground, and background. So when you see this, there's a particular angle that of 70 degrees. 70 degrees is nothing but how far away can you put your neck when you're using a virtual reality headset instead of moving the complete body. The curiosity zone is nothing but when you want your user to completely turn over to the other side of the interface or interaction or the environment that you're designing for. And how often do you want them to go to the curiosity zone, or how are you building the curiosity zone for them? Peripheral zones are nothing but when you want your user to move or just shift to their either right or left side. So these are nothing but comfortable zones that you should keep in mind when you're designing into the virtual world, because you can't exhaust your user by just making them turn around or just make them change their angles continuously. So understanding how things can exhaust them is also important. These are some other angles which are how like side to side, if you want your user to look, what degrees are comfortable. If you're going for left to right, it's from 30 degree is comfortable, but 55 should be max. So if you want multiple left to right interactions happening in the VR headset or the environment that you are at, keeping them multiple at 30 degrees is really comfortable for the user. After that, it gets tiring. Avoid the users feeling rushed. So many applications that I've used on virtual reality, once you click on the application, they actually start taking you into the environment that I want to build. But when I also tried to use a test with my product, I understood that many of the users were not understanding what I'm trying to tell them because it wasn't clear for them what I was telling them because I was already into the app. So once you get into the app, if you actually give the user the control of telling you that, yes, this is the time that I can see things visually better and I want to go ahead. So for this, what we did in our app was just put a simple logo, or we would just put one simple object in front of them and we would ask them if things were clear for them. You should understand if the user can see everything clearly in their virtual reality headset. Because if they can't see things clearly, that's the time that they are just going to fail the complete test because the thing that you want to show them in front of them is not visible to them properly. So keeping a small, maybe you can have a button for them, or maybe you can just have a really easy object and you ask them, can you see the object clearly? Once they see the object clearly and they tell you, yes, that's an house, I can see the house really clearly, you can move ahead for the test, or you can begin your application or the environment that you're trying to build. Understanding interactions. These interactions are not just how the remote is going to control your virtual reality, or not just how it happens currently in the market. When I went for this, I started sitting in the clinics and observing what kind of interaction does the doctor have with the patient. How does the patient interact with the current machine that is there already into the market or in the hospital that they're working at? How difficult or how simple is it? What kind of feedback are they getting when they're supposed to press a certain button, or when are they pressing it? These are certain interactions that we really need to keep in mind. So we also need to understand keeping these interactions as true to the world, or how they are in the actual environment is going to help you design better, because keeping the world around you and having a similar virtual world would help your users adapt to it faster. Virtual environments are distracting. The more feedback, the better. Having 360 degrees and having multiple visual elements in your virtual reality, you're always going to start exploring. And right now in the current market, not many people have interacted in the virtual world. So they're always going to be curious what is going to happen next, or what would happen if they're going to move their neck from left to right, and they're just going to be curious what is exactly going to happen when they're moving around. So you need to understand, the better the feedback that you give is going to be easier for the user to understand what exactly is the process that they're supposed to take. Sounds and audio. When we design interactions right now, maybe for mobile or web, we avoid sounds because they are really irritating. If you, how many of you have the keypad tone on their phone? Like when you're actually dialing somebody, there is a sound response that you get. Does anybody have it on your phones? That is something that is irritating because you're keeping on pressing the button, it's going to give you that sound feedback. But when it comes to virtual reality, you're actually immersing into it. You don't get a feedback, you're not going to get a feedback of vibration or some kind of different tactile feedback when you're in a virtual reality world. Sound can actually help them get into the zone or help them understand what they are trying to do. Audio would be something that even I experienced. In virtual world, you can't give instructions, and instructions are a big part when it comes to performing tests in healthcare. You need to inform or instruct your patient every time they're starting the healthcare. So having this written on your virtual reality interface is going to be really difficult, because they maybe can't read it, or it's really difficult to read the text in a virtual world because of more visual elements. So keeping and considering to keep a small audio clip about the interactions is going to help you go a long way. When I was working here, the major thing that I faced was not everybody could understand Hindi or English, and these were the only two languages that I could actually speak. So what do? So I just tried to record certain clips, because the instructions are always going to be similar. I'm not going to change instruction as per the patient. So I just recorded the basic instructions that they were supposed to follow in multiple languages on the VR headset. And they would just hear or understand the sound and audio what was playing, and they would perform things similarly. There's always going to be a moderator to help them. but then having the sound feedback, the audio feedback for them is better than making them read something in the virtual world. Input methods. So how many of you here have played PlayStation? If I give you a new game right now with all new controls and I blindfold you the very next moment, do you think you're going to be able to perform all the tasks or just press the correct buttons for the correct item? That is what happens when you get into a virtual reality environment. It's a blind mode on for everybody. You're never going to see your remote control once you have your VR headset on your eyes. You just have to understand the instructions or what you've been told. So keeping these interactions or the buttons simple is the key. And when it comes to healthcare, one wrong press of a click can actually change the results drastically. Or you also need to understand there is no feedback to these remote controls unlike real life. You actually know you've pressed or not. Here, you just have to depend on the sound or some kind of interaction or a tactile interaction that you can give to the remote control when you're actually giving an input to it. So keeping your input methods, maybe if it's a remote control, don't use multiple combinations of buttons. The only combination that I used for my device was the trackpad. Trackpads are right now universal for many of the virtual reality headsets out there. Unlike joystick, which is really common in the PlayStations, right now trackpads are really going ahead because you cannot just use it as a touch interface, you can also use it as mechanical buttons at particular spots. Creating familiar experience. Just think today that you're taking an eye test at some hospital and tomorrow you have to do it again. Maybe it's a repeated process. But you've taken the test on an actual device and tomorrow I tell you that, oh sorry, we don't have that device, we've replaced it with virtual reality headset and that's how it's going to run now. If it's a similar experience that you had prior to that, it's going to be very easier for you to adapt to it. So we performed a user testing with multiple people. So during my project, what I did was I divided my target audience for the user testing into two groups. One group was people who've already taken that particular test, and next group was people who are completely new to the test. The results of trying to explain them what is going to happen increased my time duration by minimum 5%, 5 minutes per patient, which is really big when it comes to testing people. And imagine if you have 10 people, it's more than 50 minutes that you're just spending with the user just because you don't have a familiarity in that experience. So this is how, if you create a similar experience that they faced earlier or familiar experiences that they face every day, is going to be easier for them to grab them or just to involve with your product faster. Performing user testing and sharing insights. So majorly I would say user testing, what I followed for my project was an agile method where you just try to, you try to implement it and you use it on the target audience. When it comes to user testing in virtual reality world, one thing that I would strongly suggest is always perform UTs with the target audience that you have. Because what I tried was, so my target audience was people with age 70 plus. I tried to use it on them and I got some results. And if I tried to perform similar tests with someone who was 23 or 23 to 30 age old, they actually helped me get better insights. But they weren't my user testing, the people who I user tested for. I got the actual insights or the actually valuable insights when I was performing the testing with actual users who were the end users for my product. They can actually give you the most perfect and appropriate feedback that they faced. And that's how you can actually change things easily. When it comes to healthcare, it's not going to be just designers and engineers working together. You're going to have doctors and multiple other people who work together on a project. So sharing the usability testing insights with everybody is going to help everyone perform better. The engineers can perfect their algorithms or at least try to change certain things if they find that testing had something to do with algorithms. The clinicians can actually tell you these were certain things that they wanted to opt for and these are falling, so maybe you need to try something new. Sharing your insights is just going to help you create a better design faster. Keep it simple. Keeping it simple is the key when it comes to virtual reality. The more you actually put it on your user, the more of visuals that are going to impose on your user, they're going to get exhausted very fast. And if you keep user apart, there's one more thing, which is we use virtual reality headset because they're wireless. You also need to have that battery life to test multiple patients. You can't keep charging the virtual reality headset every one patient done. So keep it, don't keep your visuals that heavy that they're going to drain out the complete battery out of your virtual reality headset. The simpler the interaction, the cleaner and the easier for the user to use them. Keep hygiene in place. Most of you must have seen the virtual reality headsets or the gaming rooms that are available in the malls right now. If you just calculate, more than 50 users are going to be using the particular virtual reality headset every day. There is sweat involved, there is bacteria involved. You need to understand in healthcare that gets more critical than what it is at the gaming center, and how you can keep hygiene in place. There are multiple things like cleaning your virtual reality headset, or maybe even giving a mask to your patient. These are basic things that you can perform with your virtual reality device, because keeping the hygiene in place is going to help you have a better VR headset and also keep your patients a bit out of the danger or catching some other infections that might be happening. Avoid using jargons. So jargons is more or less, just think of getting onto a medical, just talking to a doctor and they're using some terms or some words that you actually don't understand. This is something that I faced into when I got really new at LV Prasad. There were people using certain jargons that I was really new to. But at the end of the process, I started adapting to them and I implemented them in my design. But during my user testing, I realized the people out there or the users are not very comfortable or around the jargons that I'm using. So using the simple words for jargons or using simple text is going to help your end users adapt to things faster and understand things easily. These are few things that I actually got through my project. Thank you so much. I hope these helps you all.